Hello, good day. How are you, everybody? Ivan here. Just thought I will pop in for hopefully a quick half an hour or so to talk about the the game that just happened, Wrexham versus Sheffield Wednesday. I watched as much as I could of that game. Didn't really go into the reading the reviews and listening to people's opinions. Saw some comments online and people talking about this and that and how they are disappointed, and some of them are, let's say, less than happy. Some of them are saying that it's actually, it's all right and it's going to get better and all that good stuff. So I thought I would go in and maybe do a bit of a review and a rehash of what's been happening. And I am sorry for this sort of impromptu setup. We have just moved the house again, and yeah, obviously just kind of on the go, on the fly arrangement here. The the result. The result was disappointing for, I'd say, for Sheffield more than Wrexham, mainly because the last kick of the game, and it could have been a loss and a well-deserved win by Sheffield, especially keeping in mind the state of the club. And this was one of those games where Wrexham should have won, and if you don't win against a club like that in that state, and it's there is a lot of questions to be asked. But again, it is what it is. Everything is connected, so it's not a separate event. It's a part of a current vector of the team. The answer, before I go into the details again, just because I saw some live comments online during the stream, is that people saying we need more players. The answer is not more players. It seems like so far, okay, we lack in attack, we need to bring another attacker. We lack in defense, we need to bring another defender. We lack in the midfield, we need to, that's not the answer. People bringing in people and asking them to get in and perform straight away, it's such a primitive and fundamentally wrong approach that even a Sunday League coach understands that. A sign of a good coach, a sign of a good manager, is you take medium average players and you through educating, through creating patterns and systems and a holistic approach, you make them an excellent team, right? So that's the sign of a great coach. What we're seeing right now is pretty much the opposite, is the desire of somebody to take an easy shortcut and ask people to perform individually while not being able to adapt in any way, shape, or form, neither to the opponent nor to the timing of the game, and not to the league either. So it's just one of those things that we need to unpack a little bit. And good morning, Wayne. Good to see you, buddy. Please join in the discussion. And good evening, Scott. Good evening, everybody. It's great to hear from you guys. Great to see you here. I don't have too many viewers because obviously a lot of the people don't like listen to me talk because that doesn't make them happy, and they operate in the simple principles of positives and negatives. I'm not being neither positive nor negative. I back up my arguments by by science, effectively, by knowledge of the sport, by knowledge of sports, and my background in other stuff. So I'm not here to be positive or negative. Those are the discussing on that level is very, very primitive. It's very primitive. You should not be operating on that level in any aspect of any industry, any activity. Same as wins and losses. You cannot operate on the levels of wins or losses. It's very primitive. It's basic, rudimentary punditry that we not. You try to think one step ahead, preferably two steps ahead. Winning should be a byproduct of almost like an unfortunate or fortunate byproduct of a well-established approach, of a well-established conveyor of operational models. So let's step away from that, because if you're gonna be thinking in the sphere of winning or losing all the time, you will always be behind. You will always be one step behind. It's like that old saying of General Patton: infantry wins the battle, logistics wins the war. Right. So in football terms, when we talk about the game, we need to talk about the system, the approach, the overall concept of how your team is playing, and not only playing on the pitch but off the pitch too. So operational environment, and that will dictate your results. So right now people are saying about how the team needs to gel. It's irrelevant, because other teams are also gelling. We need to bring more players. It's irrelevant. Other teams also will be bringing players. So everything you do is relative to the opposition. It's relative to your operational theater. So it's not like everything stands still and you move separately in that vacuum. No, the concept develops the progress and the movements of the elements on the battlefield, on the football field. They operate together. So you have a lot of what's called black swans, so unknown factors. You have known factors, and I watched the latest episodes on me and Ruby, and then what I did with tactical analysis. I am amazed. I have to give myself a pat on the back. I'm amazed how exactly I described everything that's happening, and I stick by my words. And everything I say is done not out of. I'm not trying to show off. I'm just sharing, and I'm saying things exactly the way I see them. So everything I have described is actually happening, but some of the things even I underestimated. So there are some things that I expected that were going to go a bit better, but they are not. So, yeah, guys, Wayne and Scott, if you have any, we have somebody else watching, so welcome. If you have any questions, quick line in the chat, and I will sort of diverge and touch on that. But please stay objective and try to stay on the on my sort of on my level of. It's not like it's high or low. No, it's just on my plane of discussing this. Like just like a step away from positivity, negativity. That's irrelevant completely. That's primitive way of thinking of things. Step away from winning or losing. That's absolutely irrelevant. We need to talk about strategic approach, and we need to discuss the overall picture of what we are seeing. So from the beginning, for 2.5 years right now, I am trying to get through to people and explain that you can win in the wrong way. Okay, if you do want to achieve defensive cohesion, if you want to achieve overall team cohesion, you need to start incorporating structured build-ups into your game. And when people say structured build-ups, everybody thinks about building from the back. No, build-up refers to all areas of the pitch. Okay, so again, in modern football, your phases of play are effectively the spine of your structure. Okay, we are what I've been seeing all along, and the further we progress through the leagues, the more I see this under Parkinson, is that we skip phases and zonal progression on the pitch, and we lose the spine. So it basically means that we have nothing to build upon. Offensive progression through your thirds. Let's simplify things a little bit. So offensive progression through your thirds. So build up, consolidation, creation, and then finishing. It's not just about attacking. Okay, so each phase incorporates and embeds positional reference points. So when you are working with your players, you everything you do allows you to plan for the future. So it's not Dabby seemed to have stepped up but looked tired toward the end. Brennan was excellent and played a lot deeper in the second half, and Dabby lost him. He was handling him quite well. Okay, cool. Good point. Actually, that's what I'm going to be getting to. Why second half looked so much worse than the first half, even though the first half didn't look excellent either. The If you basically what I was saying is that if you establish those reference points, it will allow for your team to remain connected vertically and horizontally. So reference points, they act as knots, as anchor points all around the pitch. And consequently, if you bypass a phase by playing vertical football, by asking your goalkeeper, for example, to play long every single time on 90% of the time, or even 50% of the time. If you don't have preset design plays in place, you will skip your build up, you will hit direct ball, you will sacrifice all the chances that you have to. So you throughout your build up phase, you have opportunities to align the distances between the back line, the midfield, and the forwards. And that's very much simplifying it. So you, at the same time, you establish sort of your key occupational zones. You predefine your half spaces, your interior and exterior lanes. You pre-design your areas of overloads. You basically all that as you move through the phases, it creates what's called a rest defense. And the reason why Wrexham parks the bus and sits deep quite often without even realizing that, even when they are playing fresh and even when they are playing better than the opposition for short spans of times, is because the positional structure is not there. Therefore, you don't have the insurance against transitions. So every time the other team is transitioning on the turnover or they're trying to build up from the back, we don't have that structure in place. So that insurance, that rest defense, literally doesn't exist. And throughout the game, by the second half, we end up sitting so deep and we have no anchors to build upon to push out of it. Because if you skip phases and zones on the way up, you cannot preset your defense in place. Practical, convertible defense, meaning defense that you can turn into attack. That's why you see that we give up the possession, we sit low down, and we absorb. In the lower leagues, when you have better players, that works. Here, it won't. Yep, sure, Scott. Come back when you can. Thank you so much. I will carry on explaining some of the things here. So what I was talking about is that without setting up your rest defense, without structural buildup, your defensive shape collapses before you lose the ball. I hope that makes sense. So you already have nothing in place apart from low block and parking the bus and absorbing punches before you even lose the ball. So on that rest defense, if you set it up correctly, which Wrexham doesn't do whatsoever and never done actually, unless they dominate player to player on the entire pitch, you sacrifice your transitional security. Okay, so in football terms, again, rest defense, it's how many players and in what structure are left in position to defend the moment you lose the possession. Okay, if you don't build through your thirds, say your fullbacks, your pivots do not help you maintain the possession. The center back, for example, lacks reference points to join into the certain zones. You lose the transitional security. The team becomes disciplined. Correction. I wouldn't. Let's not go to the discipline yet. The team becomes rather disjointed. Your forwards get isolated high. Kiefer Moore scored a couple of good goals today, but effectively that doesn't define that doesn't bring you the results you want, because time after time, when you're playing that kind of approach, your forwards get isolated really, really high. Your back line is too deep, and your midfield, everybody's complaining about not having midfield. It loses compactness, so it loses that ability of adjust to the game, to the progression. It gets lost in the no man's land. As a result of all that, when possession turns over, you don't have a capacity to effectively counter press on intelligent basis. People call it gegenpressing. You're not even capable of doing a staggered defensive recovery. And that's why, again, Wrexham falls down into that full parking the bus. It's not even because Parky asks them to do so. It happens as a result of lack of structure, lack of spine, and lack of ability to adjust the system to what the opponent is doing. So that pretty much happens on its own. A lot of people don't understand that. Simple words, in failure to attack in a structured way, you already presetting yourself to defend chaotically before you even lose the ball. Hope that makes sense. Next one, from that, what I was actually thinking about while I was watching the game is zone occupation. Again, that's what's been going on with the team for years. It's just a complete lack of modern thinking and adequate coaching. Good build-up play forces the opposition to shift, compress, and eventually they will open pockets of space, corridors. While doing so, your team at the same time is also occupying, let's call them rational zones, okay? Zones that make sense. So basic positional play principles: width, depth, occupation of half spaces, pockets. This occupation, it translates directly into your defensive game, into your defensive strength. Let's put it this way. Mainly because you shorten the distances between your lines. Your players are, and I've been saying it over and over again, when players are positioned on the pitch disproportionately and they do not maintain proportional distances and angles between one another, you lose zone effective and proactive zone occupation. That's why the team collapses so deep and so quickly onto the ball carrier. So, people say they're watching the ball, we get carved up open. That is why it's happening. So I'm just trying, I'm trying to give you, it's not because players are not trying. It's not because they are lazy or simply because they're getting tired. No, it's the wins and losses are a byproduct of the system or lack of it, of what you're playing. And that is exactly what we're seeing. So what is happening? They cannot avoid it. It's embedded in the way they operate on the pitch. If you have, for example, clear pressing triggers, for instance, backward pass, poor finish, poor first touch, an incorrect lateral shift, you have to react to them. Same happens when you're transitioning backwards, so-called reverse transition. If you bypass the structure, if you bypass this, your players, they left isolated like birds on the wire. So long vertical distances, huge horizontal gaps, and they, even if they know, like, because they all are educated players, right? But they physically have no access to pressing cues. And that's why we see when they're trying to press quite often on the last couple of games, it just seems like, and I remember I was watching one of the games with Alex, and I said, like, why are they running? Why are they trying to press now? There was no indication of a full commitment for a press. And it seems like they just run at the opposition. That is why it's happening. From there, we need to talk about, and again, everybody is mentioning that the lack of midfield, right? So midfield is non-existent. Midfield anchoring and counter pressing triggers are connected. The midfield is one of the most challenging zones on the pitch to get right, especially if you are not a competent tactician. The midfield itself only learns those pressing cues if it has been integrated into the build-up. You cannot expect your midfield to perform on a championship level with a creativity and transitional capability if you bypass your midfield 9 out of 10 times, even 5 out of 10 times. You can bypass your midfield, but it has to be an exception, not the rule. And you have to maintain possession from the build-up. If you don't, you cannot expect them to be integrated into the pressing cues in defense. For example, a pivot dropping into zone 1 and 2, which is between the CBs, they know exactly when to step up, when to move diagonally, and cut the lanes after loss. So remember, when people talking about double pivots, again, they have no idea what they're actually talking about. Double pivot as such doesn't really exist in the same parameter on defense as it is on offense. Double pivot is mainly it's in the ideal world, it is referred to as a construct that helps you maintain the possession, not get it, but maintain it. Another good example would be when your interiors who receive possession in zones 3 and 4, for example, are already pre-orientated to collapse in a certain manner on the ball, shall it be lost. Wrexham has none of it. It's all reactive, and it's all fitness-based. So run back, track back, and try to cover one passing lane, and preferably try to take a person one-on-one. But if you don't have those involvements, midfielders are constantly bypassed and disconnected. They are defending on the turn. That's why they arrive late. That's why it feels like there is no midfield, because they pretty much arrive late to the game every time. They effectively screening empty zones. Hope that makes sense. I'm just trying to explain it to you from the point of view that it's not random. And what is happening right now has been happening all along. It's just quicker, faster opposition with more in-game intelligence and multiple systems in place that can be adjusted on the fly. They just highlight those gaps and those deficiencies a lot more vividly. Let's put it this way. The bottom line is that the teams that rely on direct play often end up defending in a low block by default, because that is the only way. And if every now and then, for example, when you're fresher in the beginning and you have your key players who are stronger than everybody else, sort of carrying you through the first first half of the game or half of the first half of the game. Even if it seems that it's not so, it is still so. It will keep on happening up until they run out of gas or get injured, which we're seeing every time, and people playing half injured too. Basically, you end up in the low block all the time because your midfield never structurally prepared to maintain possession and press higher up the pitch. So you will always collapse. And here's the comparison of, let's say, defending higher and retreating low. Defending is not only about reactive compactness. It's not only about keeping your discipline and shape. It's effectively not only about dropping into banks. It's about proactive occupation. Teams with appropriate and more sophisticated build-up plays, they can defend and meet the opposition higher at the pitch because the line of confrontation is advanced by default. So they are pre-designing the line of confrontation to be higher up the pitch. Yes, absolutely, Waynes. They monkey in the middle, piggy in the middle. They are, no matter how good those players are, they are disjointed. They are not. If you don't build up from the back and the sides, if you don't preset your midfield in certain zones, in certain timings, they can be best players in the world. They will be dumbed down to playing monkey in the middle. That's simplifying it a lot, but that's exactly what happens. So, confrontation line, what I was talking about, is advanced, so it's pushed further up. Distances are compressed. Forwards are more orientated to close lateral lanes instead of chasing long second balls and picking up the scraps. This allows what's called pressing in waves. So first wave, second wave, it's when the first line triggers the second line and so on and so forth. And then it's that caterpillar effect when your lines compressing. The ball movement gives them the time to advance up the field. Yes, and not only advance up the field, but advance up the field in the manner that, shall the ball be lost, they are not piggy in the middle, and they're not screening empty zones. So that's why I've been saying all along that you cannot rely on individual performances. A team of average players with good discipline and superior tactical training and ability to change from within the system and from one system to another and apply fluid from formations will end you. When you skip the build-ups, your forwards are detached. They ultimately become detached sprinters. So they just run up and down with your midfield being bypassed, and your back line is forced to drop back and retreat. Hence, park the pass is the only mechanism that becomes available. So effectively, you not utilizing your midfield whatsoever. Hope that makes sense. When Wrexham plays long ball to Kiefer Moore, they are by default, and I'm simplifying that a lot. They are by default skipping the zone 1 and 2 progression. When they are playing long balls for wingers and wingbacks to run to and then cross the ball in, still the same thing happens, but even more zones get left behind and get skipped. When midfielders don't receive the ball in the build-up, and the second ball is lost, whether the person who tries to cross into the box gets robbed, or the second ball is lost when it's hoofed up to the tall guy, they are 20 to 30 yards away from the play. They might know what to do, but like I was saying in my previous podcast with Ruby, they have to literally teleport themselves around the pitch. They cannot. They can be as talented and as amazing players. They can be the best and most expensive players in the world. They are not where they're supposed to be. Why people don't understand it? Why Parkinson doesn't understand it, and they blame the fitness. They say that we get tired. You cannot have enough fitness to cover for tactical and operational mistakes. It's impossible. You're not a gazelle. Yeah, I don't know what other examples to give to people. Okay, let's take a step back. So midfielders don't receive the ball in the build-up. Second ball is lost. They are 20, 30 yards away from the play. What do we have from here, objectively? No counter press. Intelligent, especially counter press, higher up the pitch. We are literally just running to recovery. So recovery runs. That's Sunday League. That's not even League One. That's Sunday League. Yes. When we'll see you talking to a professional athlete and person who played another ball game. Yeah, absolutely. Continuous, pointless waste of energy. Hence, rates of injuries, especially amongst midfielders, all the way from attacking midfielders to defensive midfielders. Everybody's playing players. We have good enough players. We didn't have to bring all these guys and spend so much money. I would argue that we already have good enough players. They just need to be taught and educated on how to play. They are well talented enough. Just like I said, if you're playing system that makes decisions for you, that supports you, you can be an average player and you will be outperforming team of superior players, if you know what I mean. So, again, I lost my train of thought again. No counter press. So we're just doing recovery runs. Your center backs become exposed to one-on-one situations, and that's why people complain about Max and Brandt, and because they get beat. It's not their fault. It's not necessarily their fault. You cannot expect your defender to defend one-on-one 100% of the time, each game, every game. That's why there is basic basic balance, pressure, and cover triangles that need to be in place. So yeah, we still need more speed. I get it, but usually when you're just relying on fitness and speed, that means that you're lacking in your structure and setup. Sorry, my daughter is Olivia. Can you please go upstairs? I'm a little bit busy. Thank you. From there on, your team, and I repeat myself again, forced to collapse into a reactive low block. They are forced to do it. It's not because they are too weak. It's not because they lack skills. It's because that is the only way the system takes them, is to collapse into long ball. They cannot resist it. It's like falling off the roof. You cannot fight the gravity. It will take you down there. If you don't have a parachute, if you don't have an engine to lift you up, you will fall. If they, on the other hand, if they build up through the zones, for instance, with pivot dropping in and the wing backs offering progression and lateral passes actually meaning a trigger for diagonal movement, they will be already in shape to collapse, especially centrally when the possession is lost, and the speed becomes less crucial. In a nutshell, again, attacking in phases, you're training your defense at the same time. when you don't skip your phases and zonal progression. If you skip the build-up, you skip the glue, effectively. You skip that glue that holds your team compact, and it creates that effect of breathing ball in and out. That's why possession, it's not just about style. It's not just about sexy football. It's about structure. It's about organizing your defense before you need it. So creating that insurance. And people just say, this again, another buzzwords. We need to gel. We need to gel. We need to gel. Yes, you will get a random win here and there, but gelling will not. It will not suffice against superior structural advantages that other teams have. What else? Well, talking about speed actually right now with wingers, right? So wingers, they are the ones, or wing backs, that people think about when we're talking about speed. Excuse me. Wingers who stretch the pitch in build up, they're not just there to get tired and to run that line and get their boots white. More ball, less defense. Defense drains energy. Absolutely, defense. Even though defending is easier, defending without presetting for an attack and keeping an appropriate structure, it's just a waste of energy. That is true. Absolutely true. So basically, about talking about the wingers and the speed. By fixing your opposition fullbacks and pinning them wide, they create diagonal passing lanes and passing lanes into interior midfielders. They give fullbacks and multiple pivots that you can have on the pitch reference points for progression. They maintain the overall shape and the geometry of the rest defense, effectively, of that insurance that I was talking about all this time. Basically, they keep the team spread out rationally. Let's put it this way. If you bypass with long direct balls, or you just hope for kick and chase and hope for the winger to chase the ball down the wing and make a cross, your wingers suddenly end up in isolation. So they're either receiving in the isolation, and they are completely detached from midfield rotations. And their defensive compactness by default is gone. So before the turnover even happens, they are already out of the game. So that's why, like Wayne, you, for example, saying we need more speed. I agree, but at the same time, not necessarily. It's, again, the way we play the wingers, the wingbacks. If you play them so that even Usain Bolt will be isolated because the way you're delivering the ball to them presets them for an isolation before they even turn the ball over, shall that happen? Does it make sense? So you cannot cover with speed for a complete lack of build-up structure. Again, I'm going back to that concept again. Nothing is accidental on that pitch. Like you can, when you talk about systems, and just like I said, yes, we'll get a random win here and there. We're not talking about wins or losses. We're talking about overall picture and the vector of where we're going, okay, and how it all develops. So speed can be an answer in a separate example, but overall, it's still not going to solve the issue. Your speediest player or players, all that happens if they consistently doing, like you said, beep test during the game, they will get fatigued, tired, and injured first. Hamstring injuries usually. When you have that kind of approach to your game, your players will start receiving hamstring injuries. That's what it is. So, talking about further developing that discussion about wingers. Well, correctly played wingers provide for transitional insurance, especially on the strong side. So, well-positioned winger in zone, usually it's zone 4 and 5, depending on the system that you play. So it's final third wide. Also is a part of a rest defense. That's what I'm talking about. It's also a part of a rest defense. On turnover, they are the first wave of counter press. Effectively, they pressing through that half space that they created during the build-up. But if they don't create that half space during the build-up, they have nowhere to press through. It's a cause and effect relationship. So the backward run over even the speediest winger and wingback, they define whether the midfield can stay compact or whether your defensive players will be exposed effectively in an overload situation. 1v2, 2v3, so on and so forth. This is why managers demand, a lot of the managers, they demand defensive wingers. Not in the sense of parking the bus and playing deep like Parky does, but in terms of pressing triggers and intelligent reaction to turnovers. On top of that, they are trained into their transitional responsibilities, so that even when they get tired or when they are slower by default, like older wingers, for example, they can still perform with a very high rate of reliability. Usually the run forward of your winger is only effective because their recovery runs were in sync with midfield compactness. Wrexham has none of it. It's all accidents, and you can see that happening. The biggest telltale is that if you're playing better while you're fresh, as cliche as it sounds, if you're playing better in the first half of the game and you don't trust your subs, that is the biggest telltale of this disjointed relationship between central midfielders, compactness of midfield, and the wingers. Again, lack of operational, tactical, systematic training. Just play what you see kind of a approach. So quite often, like when I used to play, and I used to play winger a lot back in the day, my coach would always tell me, and we, unfortunately, most of the time that I played, we played this old school sort of 90s football because that's when I grew up. So, but my coach would always tell me, the winger flies. That's why winger is called winger, because wing, you got to fly, as cliche as it sounds. But for the winger, and only later on, when I educated myself and when I became a bit more experienced and wiser, I understood that for the winger to fly, it needs a runway. You need to be preset for your flying. So you have to be quite low in your takeoff. So stretching the pitch, especially in zones 2 and 3, giving depth options effectively. You have to know how high you're going, so kind of know your cruising altitude, so to speak. So you're going to be occupying certain channels, whether it's wide channels or half spaces, overlapping, interlapping. You'll be combining diagonally with interiors, with fullbacks, with pivots, or you will be the part of the pivot. And you make sure that like if you're going to be flying, you're going to know when and how to land. So make sure your landing gear is in check. So you got to collapse inward on an intelligent pressing trigger when possession is lost. You got to narrow the team. You have to cut the central lanes. So you need to know. So if you skip the first two stages, what I'm saying that if you skip the first two stages again by playing a long ball, goalkeeper kicks it up. You only get that sort of chaotic version, a winger who's chasing hopeful second balls and flick-ons, disconnected from midfield. They they look like they're running and they're trying really hard, but in fact they are just free falling. So they're not flying. They are in the stall and they have no flight plan. And that's when people say like they too slow. They not really too slow. They just don't like they might be. Don't get me wrong. They might be. And it's always better to have bigger, faster players, but they might just be flying without coordinates, so to speak. Effectively, to tie it into defense, for example, uh, defending quite often starts with wingers, actually. So intelligent wingers, they, just like I said before, they in a sense define your line of confrontation. So they step high, they angle the pivot and the press inside, for example. They force the play centrally. Um, if you have a midfield trap, for example, which we don't, again, so that doesn't work. They drop and arc their runs. Again, we used to have a pre-designed arcs that either force the opposition to the side, or we would like them to make a certain pass in a certain area for a trap. But basically, they funnel play to the touchline uh, for a what's called a sideline press. They can only do that if they part of the build-up phase. So if they are part of that build-up phase, they their bodies are orientated correctly, and most importantly, the distances, that proportional distances that I keep on talking about, are correct. If a winger who only receives second balls, lucky long balls, vertical balls, that winger is defending on the turn, never on the front foot. So again, you always will be one step behind. Effectively, when people talk about wingers and wingbacks, they talk about them like sprinters with football boots on. They need to fly up and down the pitch, high work rate, but the truth is that it has to be guided. Their work, their speed needs to be guided by the team structure, effectively. And if they are isolated and disconnected, when the ball is lost, they are lost in no man's land. They're always late. They are landing in the wrong area of the pitch. Build up, again, possessional play. It's not just about style. It's about making sure, in this case, that your wingers can move forward and move back in the speediest fashion they can, but they maintaining defensive shape even during the build-up, leaving almost no holes on the pitch. That's why winger is one of the most difficult positions to play. And talking about wing backs, like because a lot of the things that apply to wingers, they also apply to wing backs. It's just with wing backs, they have let's say a dual role. So they're not only flying up and down the wing, but they also are anchoring. Okay, so whether you operate on the basis of formation geometry, like 3-5-2, 3-4-3, the wingbacks are themselves the entire wide corridor. And they must provide width in possession. They must, at the same time, anchor defensive transitions. And their positioning, especially, it literally determines whether your formation, your fluid formations and your systems be, behaves more defensive, attacking, or somewhere in the middle, balanced effectively. In other words, again, going back to that concept of formation only being a skeleton, the wingbacks supply the muscle to operate that skeleton. But without proper buildup, your muscles will be working out of sync, and you'll end up getting cramps. So wingbacks in the buildup, we're talking about build up, for example, through zone 1 and 2, we usually see them starting low. So we don't see that in Wrexham on the team, but what ideally you should see if you're actually building up properly is you would expect them to start a bit lower to receive that diagonal switches from CBs or from pivots. They must know the timings of the release. Basically, to avoid isolation, because if you know how people complain about Barnett carrying the ball for too long, it's because he's not trained on the timing of the release. I don't know why. He should be. They, at the same time, they often tuck inside in 3-2 shape, and they effectively become auxiliary midfielders, especially on the weak side. Can happen on the strong side too, but weak side, they don't need to stay that wide anymore. If you're talking about progressions through zones 3 and 4, they would stretch wide to open those, let's say, half spaces for interiors. And not necessarily will be half spaces, but for the sake of this example, we can call them that. They would also provide vertical passing lanes for center backs or pivots. Their body orientation is always the key, because they, like I said before, they must be ready to transition into defense and collapse backward instantly on the turnover to maintain the connection between the waves. In creation, so zones 4 and 5, for instance, they attack like wingers a lot. So a lot of overlapping, like I said before, a lot of underlapping. They can deliver effective cutbacks, so diagonal back passes. But every time they move forward and sort of they fly up that wing, needs to be pre-calibrated against your pre-designed rest defense. I keep on highlighting that. Do we have enough cover if I overcommit forward as a winger, as a wingback? Defensive transitions for wingbacks are very challenging. They will be the first ones to sprint 30-40 meters into line with the CBs. They are the hinges that dictate the fluidity of your transitional formations. And basically, poor recovery or a poor reaction to turnover will leave your CBs dragged wide, and then central overload happens. We get carved up every time. We can see the same. Like today in the chat, I saw that. Same goal every time. It looks just the same. It's because this is what we do, and it cannot be any other way. And you cannot achieve better results just by throwing better players. They need to know what they're doing. Well, rest defense. Again, going back to rest defense and counter pressing. In a good team, in a well-trained team, wing back will be integrated into your defensive setup, into your defensive grid, essentially. If one wing back moves forward, the weak side, it'll tuck inside to form a back four, for example, in the rest defense shape. The midfield can pivot slide laterally to cover the half space behind the advancing wing back. If you don't have that structure, especially in the build-up, if you just send the ball forward, you pre-expose your CB straight away. You open up and unprotect your central zones straight away. You force your team, and I already said that in the beginning, you force your team back into the low block, deep low block. That is why structured build-up is essential. It tells your wing back or winger when to go, how far to go, and who will be covering behind them. And again, I'm simplifying this a lot right now, but that effectively is what's happening. It's that compactness and elastic band principle. A wing back roll, it's like an elastic band, a breathing ball that I was talking about, and that incorporates everybody else on the pitch. But in possession, you stretch wide and high. Out of possession, you snap back into the defensive line. And the key here is elasticity. So you have to snap back fast and don't leave any slack, because if the band is too loose and your wing back stays too high or too wide or both, your possession is lost, and you cannot snap back into that compact, high defensive grid. I think I kind of delivered that message quite well. Let me know if you have anything to add or any questions. Effectively, in the back three, your wing backs, they both your sprinters, like I said before, and your seat belts. If they only sprint forward like a winger does, your whole system, so that whole car concept, crashes when you lose the ball, when there is a turnover. But if they time their runs, and if there is a pre-designed system that operates through phases and zones, the team can stretch forward without snapping apart at the back. So the seatbelt actually will stop it from crashing. But what we are doing right now, and the reason why the results we are getting are what they are, is we effectively keep on applying that same kick and chase primitive principle, lump it to the big guy. And that kind of football is unsustainable. In modern football, possession is not a vanity thing. It's not a vanity metric. It's the scaffolding that maintains your compactness, your vertical and horizontal control. When you play kick and chase, when you just rely on crosses into the box, when you lump the balls to your big guy up front, you effectively abandon possession voluntarily. This means that you have no controlled zones of occupation. Forget about your half spaces, your vertical lanes as such. You have no ability to, like I said before, to establish your rest defense. So that insurance factor is gone. because your midfield is simply bypassed time after time, and it doesn't matter if you bring better midfielders. It doesn't matter whatsoever. They are not going to be able to fly and teleport themselves. They're still bypassed. Every transition becomes defensive by default. So because your structure is broken the moment the ball leaves the back line or the goalkeeper. So you have no other options. And at higher levels, where people are faster, bigger, stronger, where pressing structures and defensive clues and lines are faster, they're more intelligent, they're more drilled, they're more compact. You simply cannot afford to absorb the pressure for most of the game and to give the ball away cheaply and expect to win on those survival transition mode kind of a style play. So you become very predictable. You pretty much diminishing your returns. So you direct ball into the channel or a floated cross. Comparatively, it has very low XG, what's called XG efficiency, right? So your chances of scoring from that are a lot lower than from other ways of reliably and replicably delivering the ball into the danger areas. And people are now talking about we're not using our chances. We're not using our chances because this is how it works. You're not going to be using your chances if you're delivering the ball there like that. And every time it's different because when you're causing chaos, your players don't know what to expect. So your conversion is going to be lower, and that's just there is no other way around it. From memory, from across your expected goal, your XG is like 0.1 something per shot. So you need 10 plus crosses to get a single goal, and that's if you're lucky. Um, at good levels, like championship is good enough. Um, your opponents, even Wednesday, Sheffield Wednesday today, they know how to compress the wide channel to block those service and the teams that we played before. And those teams that we played before, guys, they didn't play well. They also still gelling and training, but they already have figured it out because they already know how to do that. They know how to win first ball and aerial duel. The center backs are designed for it effectively. They will hoover up second balls with a very high chance of reliable delivery of a good first pass to create a quick counter attack. And that's how you get overloaded and exposed 2v1, 3v2, 3v1. So kick and chase, it's not only low yield, low percentage yield as such. It becomes entirely predictable. It's the easiest way for defense to nullify your attacking patterns. I cannot think of anything easier, to be honest. And on top of that, of course, you have your disconnection of lines. So direct long balls, they, again, talking about it over and over again, they disconnect the front line from the midfield. The midfielders don't advance in time. There is no synchronization between waves because ball simply bypasses them. When the turnover happens and the possession is lost, and it will almost always happen because this is what you get with playing long ball, the midfield is nowhere the pressing zone. So your rest defense again is gone before it even started. So you have your eventually uncontested second balls for their position will become a norm because your players will tire and you don't have talking about subs. Yeah, Parkinson doesn't like to sub. Wow, never happened before. Like only last 2.5, 3 years. And your backline consistently gets dragged out of shape because your center backs have to step up higher to try and cover for a misplaced midfield. You're in permanent defensive retreat, sitting in the low block. Well, that never happened before. Only last 2.5 years. It's the writing is on the wall. It's been happening all along. Still happens. So, well, that's essentially why the long ball teams, they spend most of the game defending their own half, because their attacking system effectively creates defensive chaos. So they just collapse further and further down. I mean, that's a very very, you don't have to be a genius to see that drawback and of kick and chase football. So you low technical ceiling. So the derivatives from that and what we're seeing on the pitch and what we will keep on seeing on the pitch doesn't forget about winning or losing. Forget about negativity and positivity. Just talk about science behind it, literally. You have with the style that we play, you have low technical ceiling. It reduces the demands on your midfield playmakers. You pretty much discourage development of possessional principles. So people ask for creativity, it's not going to happen. You will accumulate your fatigue. Forwards constantly sprinting into channels. Midfielders trying to chase, playing piggy in the middle. They trying to cover transitions chaotically. You will collapse under competent pressing, which is almost every championship team has enough know-how how to press intelligently. Well, they will pretty much, the teams will compress your long ball outlets. They will force even more turnovers, and even in your defensive third. Sooner or later, that's again why we continuously drop further and further down the pitch. So all that creates what's called a ceiling effect, right? So you may bully slower, weaker, lower place teams into that, into that style with consistent aerial and crossing bombardment, but at a more competent level, where the defenders and the overall team structure is higher, they more organized. Your margins, they shrink to almost zero. Like today, they effectively lost to the team who is already relegated. What a lot of people say, and again, they're not a great team, but they just a lot more. They're a lot more educated. In essence, what looks effective in what looked effective and made people support that style of play in League Two and League One is collapsing in the Championship. And it doesn't matter what level of players you get, because in the Championship, the only way you can get away with playing that kind of football is to get top Premier League players effectively, who can single-handedly make a difference, and that's a lot of money, and that's not sustainable whatsoever. And that gets me back to sort of my initial discussion about process over results. So results are a byproduct, not the other way around. A team that wins via kick and chase, long hoof ball chaos, a lucky second ball, deflection, any other happy accident, it's not actually progressing. Yes, you can win a random game here and there, but wins here are more of a statistical noise than a rule, than an indicator of sustainability and stability. The system, the phases of play, zonal progression, compactness, intelligent pressing triggers, focus on effective maintenance of the ball, possession of the ball. That's what determines whether performance is replicable. And I keep on sending that message home over and over again. So right now, if those people who are complaining and saying parky out, they have, again, I say it again, they have no right. You supported that kind of coaching and that kind of football through years. Now you have no right to say anything against the way we play. Because unless you are a complete imbecile, that was visible from the very start. So stick to your guns. Otherwise, you're just being very, very dishonest. You have to focus on process, and the results will come. If the process is the way it is now, the results will come, but there will be a different kind of results, especially if you have no flexibility and no, I'm not even talking about plan B, not even a plan A, only reliance on individual performances. And the process gives you defensive insurance. So structured build up through the through your thirds effectively. It's just like I said before, it's not just a show off. It's not just a vanity exercise. It's about synchronizing your team in distances. It's about creating reference points for pressing triggers and transitions and setting up rest defense. You ensure that every player in every position knows their recovery path. You, when you attack through structured sequences, you already defending before you lose the ball. That is why winning or losing a game or two here and there doesn't matter. The system ensures that you will perform well over the entire season, and you will be superior and smarter more often than not. The illusion of the sort of short-term success and let's bring more players. We can't defend too well, let's bring another defender. We can't play in the midfield, let's bring a couple of midfielders. Kick and then we carry on playing the same kick and chase and that hoofball principle. Everybody will get the second the team wins a game. Everybody goes back and saying, "Well, you see, it worked. We scored. We won." Yes, but it's accidental success. It's not structurally replicable and repeatable. It's over a season, as the other team progressing to, your probability will regress. So you will expose yourself, and your inefficiencies will be exposed the longer the season goes. Basically, the higher the level, the sharper the exposure. A sustainable system builds progressive superiority, not a momentarily accidental superiority, but progressive. A chaotic, direct style, it's like rolling the dice, even with great players. You may roll a 6 once, but then over 100 rolls, the house will always win, so to speak. I don't want people to confuse playing that kind of roulette for actual progress. Again, at a competent level, the defenders and the teams they are smart enough, they're fast enough, they're organized enough. If you don't build through your phases, if you don't build through your zones, you're not just wasting possession. You're destroying your defense before the other team even attacks. Wins and losses in isolation, they mean nothing. The systems is the truth. If your process is broken, your results become a mirage, effectively. Um, well, today, like first half, talking about the first half and comparing it to overall picture, you can have a moment or moments where chaos can create goals. So direct ball in, target man carries the ball through. In isolated situation, it can be effective. So quick clearance into space can catch your opposition, in a disorganized moment. Somebody wins a flick on and somehow gets around the midfielder. A cross sneaks through deflection. Some defenders might misread the flight path of the ball. Those moments they exploit the randomness of the game of the football. The fact that the ball can bounce unpredictably, or some other unpredictable factors might come into play. It's The strikers can produce a moment of brilliance, which we always talk about. That's why when you see those cup ties and the lower league side plays the higher league side, you see those unexpected results now and then. But you also know the percentage of those results. At the same time, first half versus second half, players are fresh, when they're able to press second balls, they're able to press those, make those recovery runs, when the opposition, when they not adjusted to your structure yet, because every time you're on the pitch, it takes a little while to actually understand, especially if it's a chaotic style of football that the opposition play. You need to get used to those situations and adjust to the style. The game is stretched, and the chaos pretty much rewards physical intensity. Let's put it this way. But by the second half, your stamina will drop, your recovery runs will slow down, the gaps between the lines will become even wider, and the midfielders will stop playing that piggy in the middle. Your opponents will learn you better, and they will compress in appropriate spaces better, faster, more efficiently. They will recycle the possession better, because by then they will learn your primitive ways, and they will exploit your disjointed structure and no rest defense. So the result is the same hoofball that looked dangerous for the first 30 minutes becomes a liability over the next 60 or second half, because your players, they become emotionally and physically drained. Just like I said, the proportional distances, they stretched or become disproportionate, and defensive compactness is lost, and all you have to rely on is your low block and parking the bus. At this level, the teams will be able to break that more times than they won't. That's exactly that. This is an age-old story. Every time it explains why many direct play-based teams, they they see their goal advantages disappear after the break. It's it's the simple limitations of physical and stamina, your physical conditioning and your stamina capabilities. So direct ball and lack of systematic structure puts very high demands on your team when it comes to aerobic fitness. So your forwards, they become sprinters into the channels effectively. Midfielders playing piggy in the middle, chasing second balls and trying to cover transitional gaps the best they can. Your wingbacks and wingers, they constantly flying up and down that wing, trying to recover. You over a season, just like I said before, you will accumulate injuries. It's already happening. You increase your uh, your fatigue from the like basically it accumulates over the game. So your fatigue will be increased even when you're fresh, and your sharpness over the season will decrease. And basically, your coach will only start trusting a handful of players, and he will not be making subs because the he knows that the level will drop even further, because those guys been playing together for a while, and that's what they call gelling. They start sort of building some sort of connection because they're self-coaching essentially under this chaotic system. So again, the common excuse of we'll sign better players and hoofball will work because we will win more duels. At this level, the opposition players are tactically drilled to handle hoofball bombardment, whether from flanks or from the center. Midfielders are compact and they schooled in counter pressing, especially when players are playing that simple long ball. Um, even if you get the best attackers, they will be neutralized if the service to the attacker is predictable and disconnected and disjointed. It's that individual versus system paradox that we keep on talking about. A $20 million striker cannot compensate for a broken tactical framework. Even on top of that, another $15 million midfielder and another $10 million defender. They physically cannot, because individual brilliance may rescue you in isolated games, but across a season, even the best players, they get starved without that structural, systematic, smart support and ability to change and incorporate different systems. That's why so many big money signings look average in silly, archaic, and outdated, castrated playing systems. They are simply reduced to chasing scraps. Obviously, it becomes unsustainable when you talk about sort of season long. You know, you may look good for 20 minutes for one half. You lump it forward, you win a lucky duel, you chase the second ball, maybe you will sneak a goal, but the second half, your players are exhausted. Sorry, what, Olivia? I think she's upstairs. Check in the bathroom. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm taking way too long than I expected, but uh, just kind of rolling. Like I would like to just express my thoughts so that those who listen to me can also apply it when they watch the next game. Um, what I was talking about, yeah, the fact that it might work for half an hour for one half, but your players, they will get exhausted, and the gaps will expose themselves. They will become bigger. The other team will pick you off. They will learn you. You might win one game like that, maybe two, but over a season, that randomness, that chaos that you take advantage of will disappear. Um, the results the results will show who has the system and who doesn't. Um, Buying a better player will not fix it. It's If the system is chaos, the players are just running around in chaos with bigger price tag, essentially. Um, and that again goes back to a current narrative of um, players need time to gel. Um, if you have 80% of the players who are playing right now on the pitch, um, they are all new. They just recently started playing together, and kind of on the surface, that seems reasonable. They need time to gel, but the there is no real systematic framework to learn. So a professional footballer, even on the lower level, yet along on the championship level, can understand the technical picture of what is going on right now within minutes. Uh, if there is um, If there is a more complicated, more sophisticated model or models that teams are playing, it can take a little bit longer. But modern players are all educated on a relatively similar level, and they can absorb the information relatively quickly. But for that to happen, the system needs to have automatism. It needs to have intelligence. Under given circumstances and what we got right now, there is no automatism. There is no rest defensive grids. There is no intelligent pressing triggers. The system is essentially hoof it to the long, hoof the long ball to the big man, fight for the second ball, hit the cross. That does not require gelling, as as people say. It's just running. So what people are actually talking about in this situation is old school chemistry building. Let's put it this way. So again, back in the 80s and 90s, and even before that, players live in each other pockets all the time, right? So they train together for years. They build intuitive habits. Even in practices, they play the same 11 all the time. They self-coach. They self-coach the patterns through repetition. It's all comes down to repetition rather than guided tactical designs. That kind of process takes years. The clubs back in 80s and 90s, they had very stable squads. Player turnover was a lot lower, and there was less tactical complexity. So gelling through that kind of chemistry worked. But in the modern day, especially in this league, the squad turnover is very rapid. The opponent shifts systems game to game. The tactical and operational preparation, it's modular. It's not organic. It's not just coasting. It's designed to a very specific goal, depending on the team you play and the players that are playing on the day. So Parkinson is effectively asking players to reinvent the wheel through osmosis, while other managers, they have the blueprints, the modern blueprints. So I'm just trying to explain to you the difference between the old school approach to sort of chemistry and gelling and what actually it is in the modern day. Bringing players late in the window, it's not just about chemistry, it's about the calendar. So opponents, those who brought them, I agree, Wayne, they probably by this stage it's just getting used to teammates and their little habits. Yes, absolutely. But just like I said, yes, it will get better, but other teams will get better too. And osmosis, that chemical connection, the old school term of gelling, takes a lot longer. So we still need to just survive, and Parkinson still needs to just stay. I guess because turnover of a coach in the mid-season, it's a disaster. But I'm just trying to sort of explain to you what to expect. Yeah, the opponents. We're talking about bringing the players later. They already have trained rotations. They already created systems, and they're already automatic in many aspects. Wrexham's guys right now, the new signings, they are parachuted into the team that has no systems, no patterns, no automations. They have to learn those things in the first place. So that concept of they need time to gel is just hollow in the first place. The gelling under a defined tactical model takes days, weeks. Gelling under tactical vacuum, relying on old school gelling, it takes years, if ever, because the players are effectively asked to self-organize and to self-coach, learn on the job kind of a thing. Um, the league and the other teams, they also evolve, and they will evolve faster than Wrexham's team chemistry. So every improvement is actually standing still while the other are sprinting ahead. Let's put it this way. Okay, let's sum it all up in 1 hour and 30 minutes. Um, People keep saying players need time to gel, but that only makes sense if there is a real system to gel into. Modern football adapts, modern football player adapts to tactics in days and weeks, not years. What we have right now is the situation where there is nothing to adapt to. It's hoof it long, it's fight for scraps, it's cross it in. It's not about gelling, it's about just running. The old school idea of players figuring it out themselves on the pitch that takes years, and even if that's sometimes it didn't work, but even if it worked, every other team in the league is also improving, also gelling, but with better tactical blueprints and systems. So while we are waiting for gelling and chemistry, we run a very high probability of actually falling behind. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned something. And hopefully me and Ruby will be online soon. Thank you so much.